tonight is one of the times when we are actually bringing all the hubs together so that we can have a chance to come together and talk about the statewide agenda. And just to kind of give folks a brief overview of what we will be talking about, we're going to highlight kind of how the General Assembly legislative session works, give you some highlights of what we'll be working on during the legislative session. We'll be announcing our newly created rapid response team, which will be a way to get involved in the General Assembly session. And then we'll talk about how you can get involved either as an individual or a part of your synagogue or congregation or your community group. And then what some of the next steps will be after today's meeting. And for what it's worth, I definitely view this not as me giving a college lecture, but I want it to be a conversation. Um, for what it's worth, since I am sharing my screen, I can't necessarily see if people are raising their hands or um, are dropping anything in the chat. So if you do have a question or a comment that you want to weigh in on, feel free to kind of say, "Hey, Brian, I got a question," so that I can verbally hear you, and that way we can make sure that is actually a discussion, because I think that's a big part of the process. And I will also have a few moments where I am deliberately stopping to take a moment if people want to weigh in. But with all that being said, we'll give some key dates for the legislative session because we all know how Donald Trump might be going after the Schoolhouse Rock song and our democracy, but we can talk about how theoretically, at least, how a bill can be sitting here on Hill here in Virginia. And that first step is the pre-filing of bills that has already started. A fair amount of bills have been introduced,
How do I mute myself?
but then we also, all of the pre-filed bills have to be entered by, by January 12th. Then the legislative session will start on the 14th. Um, and then it is worth noting that the session starts on the 14th, but Abigail Spanberger and the other statewide officials will not be inaugurated until January 17th. And for if you want to get really politically insidery, I have been told that Ghazala Hashmi, who will be our new lieutenant governor, will actually be sitting in the Senate on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday before she's inaugurated on Saturday as our next lieutenant governor. So you can keep an eye out for her there. And then another key date is what's called crossover. And this will happen on February 18th. And what crossover is essentially halfway through the legislative session, the all the bills that have passed the House of Delegates will then cross over and go into the Senate, and vice versa. All the bills that have passed the state Senate will cross over and go into the House of Delegates. This is very important because essentially bills have to pass at least one chamber before that February 18th mark. And so we will be participating in a lobby day on February 7th, I'm sorry, February 4th, because that means we'll be down there before crossover. But if you have any plans on actually going down to Richmond or want to make sure your voice is heard, I always recommend going down before February 18th because that's a crucial deadline. And we can always help set up your visits down to Richmond if you're not able to come with us. Um, and then, so after that, the session is expected to adjourn on March 14th, and then the governor must veto if he's going to make any vetoes by April 13th, and then the legislative session will reconvene to go over all the vetoes on April 22nd. Um, and so that will bring us to our our legislative priorities for the upcoming session. And we have three legislative pillars. And what we are using the pillars as is there are um, about 5 or 6 thousand bills that are introduced into the General Assembly every single session. And as you just saw through the timeline, session lasts about 2 months. And so when you're looking at thousands of bills in such a short period of time, there's only so much that we can actually be focused on. And so we want to make sure that we are steering our efforts towards i- issue areas where we know we can really make a difference. We have a possibility of getting some victories if we really push our efforts in a certain direction. And then we also are constantly in discussions with our partner organizations. I just spent a few hours in meetings today with my counterparts at various Virginia organizations. And so I bring that up because just because you're not seeing an issue area on our list does not mean that we don't support the broad issue or the specific piece of legislation. We are just making sure that we are prioritizing our efforts towards specific bills that we think we can really make a huge difference on and will make a difference to the community. So with all of that being said, we are focused on clean, renewable energy, um, data centers, and transportation as our big issue areas for the upcoming session. Now, we have identified specific bill. Um, if folks can make sure they're muted, that would be great.
Hey,
Um,
Brian, how about if you mute as the host?
okay. Give me 1 second here. Um, there we go. Sorry about that. Go back to sharing the screen. Alrighty. And then, so we do have specific bills. Now, you'll notice that only one bill is listed here right now. And that is because it's the only one that has explicitly been filed. And so we know what the bill number is, though I'll go over two other ones that we know are coming shortly, because I was just talking with the sponsor of those last night. So the first bill is Delegate Josh Thompson has introduced HB 153, and don't worry, we'll be sending out uh, all the information later, so don't feel like you have to scramble to take notes. And what Delegate Thomas's bill does is it sets up site assessments for data centers, and this will require when new construction of new data centers takes place, it would require site assessments for impact on noise, impact on water levels, and a few other requirements for any data center that would be constructed within 500 feet of either a school or a residential neighborhood. Um, very, very, very similar legislation was introduced last year by Delegate Thomas, and it actually made its way through the entire General Assembly, but Governor Youngkin decided to veto it. Uh, he has introduced it again this year, and we are already whipping votes and trying to make sure that it is able to get through the General Assembly. But I always like to highlight that now that we will at least hopefully have a governor who is more friendly towards our causes, a lot of the General Assembly members might be examining the bills a little closer. And that means that we can't take for granted that everyone that voted for it um, last year will also vote for it this year. And then, so going back to our overall priorities, that was the data center priority bill. You'll notice that we also mentioned clean renewable energy. The legislation that falls under that pillar is legislation that will be introduced by Delegate Rip Sullivan that would make it easier for uh, new battery storage facilities to be constructed. Um, and this is a great bill because it really helps with um, storage of renewable energy, but especially with all the overwhelming amount of usage that the data centers are doing to our electric grid, this helps supplement that. So during times of very high demand, the data centers and other uh, grid users can also rely on the battery storage. And so that will not only help our environment by having more renewable energy, but hopefully it'll have an impact on your pocketbooks by not having our energy bills increase as much as they are potentially projected to increase. And then the
So,
final,
so Brian, I'm sorry, but then that bill is you don't have an actual bill number for that one yet, right?
no, we do not have the actual
Okay.
bill number. I did talk to Rip last night, and he is going to be introducing that one again. But my understanding is there are final tweaks still happening in that, but it should be coming shortly. And as soon as we have a bill number, I will make sure everybody has a bill number so that we can all know exactly what we are talking about. And then the same situation is going on with our transportation related bill. This one is actually also coming from uh, Delegate Sullivan, and this is the EV rural infrastructure bill. Now, some of you all might remember, especially those of you who came down to the lobby day with us last January, that we actually worked on this bill last year. Um, it made it through the General Assembly, but like the other two bills that we are working on, it was vetoed by Governor Youngkin. This year, it is coming back. Um, and I know this is a bill that a lot of folks are excited about because we might even be able to get some of our more rural elected officials behind this because part of what this bill does is supply funding to help build EV charging infrastructure out in more rural communities. So it helps rural residents who might want to purchase an EV. But if you're sitting here in Arlington thinking, why do I want to pay for a EV charger out in the Shenandoah? Well, the very easy reason is if you want to travel out there and you have an EV, you have a limited range on your EV. So having the charging stations in the more rural areas will help make sure that you have the infrastructure available to make sure you can actually get out to your rural location and back without having to worry about getting stranded. Um, but just like with the battery energy storage bill. This bill has not been officially reintroduced, though Delegate Sullivan did tell me last night that he is reintroducing this bill, and he actually had spoke about EVs at his multiple town halls in the last week. So I know he's really excited about this bill. I am going to pause really briefly just to see if anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns about the advocacy pillars and legislation that we have just gone over.
Brian, there are some items in the chat, so perhaps you could check that or maybe have somebody
All right.
looking at that for you.
Yeah, so what we will do, um, and so there is a question from Dave about if a bill is not pre-filed, can it be introduced during the session? Um, there are there are sometimes, especially when it comes to the budget, has a later um, deadline. So budget amendments will often come a little later. Um, but generally speaking, most of the legislators have used up um, their the number of bills that they are allowed to introduce by the end of the filing deadline. So if a bill has not been introduced by the start of session, the odds are there's not going to be anything introduced afterwards, although there are some technicalities that you can use to introduce a bill later. And asked if the the opening session for the General Assembly will be live streamed, and then also if the um, inauguration will be live streamed. For the inauguration, it will be. It will be. I know it'll be televised and live streamed. For what it's worth, um, I believe most all the invitations to watch it in person have been sent out, but they are doing a public kind of watch party might be the easiest way to say it. Out in there's a big square near the General Assembly building where people will be gathering in person down in Richmond to watch. If you feel like making the trip and celebrating our new governor with a lot of other folks down there, uh, I know at least one person, aka me, will be down at the inauguration. Um, so there will be some of us down there, and I always encourage anyone who wants to come down. And I see mention of Wednesday, January 21st. There are some advocacy days I will just highlight, as I have highlighted in meetings earlier today. January 21st is the holiest day of the year. It is my birthday. Um, and so if you want to celebrate my birthday by advocacy, then I support that. Um, uh, Dave says Massachusetts legislator. Yes, you might have noticed I had did some modifications of a presentation I have done before that focused on the Massachusetts legislator. Um, and then, all right, so I see that I think covers the questions in the chat. So here we were go back.
Brian, I have one question about the data center bill.
Okay.
So last year, I think there were 30 data center bills. There's probably
Yeah.
going to be that many this year. Why you're in contact with a lot of people? Why did you focus on this one?
So there are two main reasons. A, this is one where it needs that extra push across the finish line. And so we have a very good chance of this actually passing. But then two, and this is probably the more important reason, is one of the big things that we have always said about the data center industry is we need more transparency. And this helps set up the transparency. A prime example that I will say is that by requiring these site studies, we will be able to get information on how it impacts water, how it impacts the surrounding neighborhood, and a whole bunch of other factors. Then, if we go to, for instance, Loudoun County, which is data center central and has ended by right zoning, we can use all that information that comes in from the study and say, hey, this is why we're at least okay with the new data center, or this is why we should not move forward with this data center. It's more information so that planning commissions and board of supervisors can make educated decisions on whether or not to approve a new data center. Or if we say, hey, look, you can do here, but you need to construct it in a different manner so that you can make adjustments to the impact, then sets up a whole bunch of other measures that we can be potentially using to help protect our communities and the environment. And it all starts with the information and transparency, which is one of the biggest things that the data center industry needs to work on. And I know a lot of our partners have been saying this will really help lay the foundation for a lot of the other crucial things that we want to do on data centers.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Alrighty. So we will now go to, we're talking about what is our new rapid response team. And the reason why we are launching this tonight is because, especially over the first month or so of the General Assembly session, we really need to take those few weeks to build momentum for our top priorities. And that is uh, and so that is why we are doing this work. And what the rapid response team is essentially we are going to be putting together a team where you will be the first ones uh, to get a call to action when, for instance, if HB 153 is about to be voted on in committee or it's about to have a hearing in committee, you'll be the first ones to know that, hey, we need to send a message to our legislators that are on that committee to make sure that they vote for this bill. And you will get access to a quick summary of the bill, access to sample language that you can use, and we'll make it as easy as possible for you to not only um, contact your legislators, but then also help spread the word so that we can get even more people to contact their legislator. And this is important because oftentimes we will hear either the night before and sometimes even the morning of that a bill is going to be having a hearing or having a vote. And so we will need to really kind of push quickly to make sure that those legislators are hearing about the legislation that we're looking at. And then if you are kind of wondering, all right, like this is something that I might be interested in doing, but I don't necessarily know what I'm supposed to say when I either email or call my legislator, so I'm not sure what to do. Well, we are going to be taking care of that. We will give you sample messaging. We always encourage you to kind of add in your own personal flavor of why you personally support that bill. And it ultimately this comes down to telling your story. Um, but for instance, you'll see on the screen here, this is sample language that we would give you for the HB 153, which is the data center bill. And so if you wanted, you could just copy and paste this into an email and send it off, or read this off during a phone call, and that would be all you needed to do. But we also really do encourage you just to tell the story. And for instance, I know many of you know Reverend Jean Wright, who was one of our co-founders and led our Loudon Hub for a long time. She would often tell people that she was passionate about making changes around data center policy because she lived in a community that was right near a data center, and when you would go to the garden in her community, you could hear the buzzing of the data center. And that story would be a prime example of why she would probably want people to support HB 153, because if they had done the study, they would have uh, studied the noise levels and known that the residents of Ashby Ponds could not enjoy their gardens and their community grounds without hearing the data center. So that personal story is a prime example of what we are hoping you would share, and we'll help you kind of give the foundation of the rest of the messaging, but always encourage you to share those personal personal connections. Um, and then in terms of what legislators to contact, we make it super easy. We can set it up so that we have a program you can use where you essentially take our message, add in whatever else you want to say, and then with a few clicks of a button, we send it right off to your either delegate or state senator. And so you don't even have to worry about trying to find the information, the contact information, because we'll give it to you right away. And that being said, probably 90% of the time you will be directly contacting your state delegate or your state senator. But there also might be times when, if a legislation is coming up in a certain committee, or if a certain committee hasn't taken up a bill that we care about and we want them to do that, we sometimes will have you reach out to the members of that committee, but we will again be able to set it up so that you can directly contact those people, and we'll let you know if that's the case where you're contacting a committee leadership instead of your normal legislators. And then in terms of timing for uh, for when to contact them, it will sometimes vary, um, but we will let you know if there is if for instance there is a vote on Friday at 10 a.m. We will let you know to get that vote's coming up, and that we need you to get those emails and phone calls in before that time. Um, and another thing that I will also point out is that we will be having, especially towards the beginning of um, the legislative session, we will have some longer time frame efforts where we're trying to get a large number of people to contact their legislators, and those we will have some kind of smaller, shorter term goals of trying to perhaps have everyone that's on this screen recruit 4 people to send those out. And if we could have everyone send out their initial email by 2 or 3 days later, then we'll have a week or so before everyone else would need to send in their emails. But we will again always be letting you know if if there is a specific timeline. I just want to um, it, stop and pause and see if anybody has questions about our rapid response team. We will be sending out tomorrow morning a sign up for the rapid response team. and everybody, you don't have to be on the call to be a member of the rapid response team. So, Allison, if you have a friend that you think would be awesome on the rapid response team, you can go ahead and email them, and they can also the link, and they can also um, uh, join up. Uh, Beth, I see your comment about Delegate Boulevards um, bill bill for the solar in large parking lots, such as congregations like yours, might be coming back. David did say that he was trying to line up a new sponsor for that. It was strongly implied to me that the person who is running to fill his seat, who happens to share his last name, it will likely be the one reintroducing that bill, but it is not guaranteed. But it was strongly implied that she would be reintroducing that bill. And if anyone else has any questions about the rapid response team, I will. You can go ahead and chime in. Otherwise, I have just a few more things to cover.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that, Brian, and this is just great. I love the idea of a rapid response team and encourage everyone to participate. Uh, Also, Brian's going to make it really easy, as he said. If all you want to do is copy and paste and just send it, you can do that. Also, but if you can customize it, that's even better. If you can mention the fact, for example, that you were a member of a certain congregation, if you feel comfortable with that, or you're a supporter of FACS, you feel comfortable with that. Um, that we have found that because FACS is a nonpartisan organization made up of people of faith and like-minded friends, that has special meaning to a lot of legislators. So don't forget to don't hesitate to be a little descriptive about yourself as well.
I will. Hi, it's Chris Topolesky, Executive Director. I will also mention that you may end up, if you're on this call and you join the rapid response team, you may end up getting a second call to action. That would be one that we'll be sending out to our full list, for example. But as Brian noted, this rapid response is really kind of the first boots on the ground, if you will. So while we're be putting out maybe a larger action alert, this is literally like call now, email now. So we get in the door right immediately with kind of like I call it the grass tops folks, the folks who are kind of really involved in the advocacy side. So you may see it, you may be part of the rapid response team and then see another note later on if you're part of the general mailing list. But that will be kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will. So I just wanted to add to that it's not like an exclusive. The rest of the folks won't be called to action, but this is to make sure that we know there's a core of folks who we can count on to be in their legislators' offices.
That's very true. And I'll also point out that oftentimes it's the first few emails that the offices actually really pay attention to. And so beyond that, oftentimes it's just kind of a tally of support or oppose. So if you do get your emails in early, you have a perk of having a better chance of your email actually being read all the way through and paid attention to. All right, so we're almost done here. And the um the main thing that I do want to highlight is, as Chris and Scott were kind of saying, it's great to have as many people as possible involved, but we really do need to kind of form have some community around the folks who are taking part in um, the actions and helping to make our impact as big as possible. And so some of the ways to do that is that in addition to doing all the work that you can as an individual, we can also bring in groups, and these don't necessarily even have to be places you would traditionally think of taking action like this. For instance, Beth, I know your congregation has a lot of folks who are really paying attention to what's going on in the environmental world. So bringing these to some of the committees that are at your congregation, or if anyone else has committees who care about social justice, or or a green committee, or for those of us who are in the Jewish faith, to Khan Alam committees, like those are great committees to bring these type of actions to, because oftentimes they'll want to participate. If your congregation doesn't have one, you can always try to create one there. Um, and then the same concept goes for uh, other community organizations. I know we have some folks from IPL on here. And so if you also do some work with IPL and you think IPL uh, might be interested in helping out, sending in some of the contacting legislators. There's no reason why you can't ask another community organization to participate. And for what it's worth, I always say don't forget about your HOAs, because HOAs, they're all your neighbors. And if there is something that might be impacting your neighborhood, like construction of a data center, then it's a great way to activate members of your HOA. Um, and it's the same concept with those other community groups. If there's not already a uh, a group working on it inside of that larger organization, you can always create it. Um, and you can also create kind of unofficial groups if you know your wine tasting group really cares about it or something like that. There are lots and lots of different ways that you can get involved. And so I am actually going to pause really quickly here because I want to have a little bit of a discussion about how we can have some localized action while we're working on state level work. And so I want to give Julie Rosenberg or other members of the Arlington team a few minutes to potentially highlight some ways that Arlington might be able to get involved with the General Assembly session.
Okay, well, I will thanks, Brian. So in Arlington, we have a terrific setup where our FACS hub works very, very closely with a couple other of the main environmental groups. And also we have people from other environmental groups participating in the hub. So we've got a rep from the tree community on the call, and I work very closely with Sierra Club and Eco Action Arlington. We coordinate on some of the legislative priorities that our county puts forward. And so, like, these action alerts are the kinds of things we would circulate to the hub, and we would also circulate to other peer environmental groups. Is that does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. And I
Okay.
think that's a prime example. And I know many of y'all who are on the Arlington hub, in the Alexandria hub, will frequently get um, action alerts from that are focused on Arlington specific uh, measures. And that's also a very similar concept where there might be, for instance, on legislation that we're working on the state level, there could be a note from Donna in Alexandria or Julie in Arlington where that this says, "Hey, send out this action alert, and here's a sentence or two about why it impacts uh, uh, Arlington specifically or Alexandria." I'll also say that in Fairfax, several of the Fairfax County delegation to the General Assembly will hold town halls during the session. And so we will make sure that if that is happening, uh, you can know where those are going to be held and how you can attend. Sometimes they're virtual, sometimes they're in person. And we like to highlight those because I will let you know that the the members of the General Assembly truly do pay attention to people who take the time to actually come out to those town halls, because simply showing up shows them that you are paying attention and really care. And that also kind of gets to a question that Julie put in the chat about when you're making the rapid response calls or emails to the in turn for uh the legislation. I always say in-person visit is the most impactful. Phone call is the next impactful. Email is the third best, and anything including smoke signals is better than nothing. Um, and so no matter what you do, and anytime you contact them, it's important, but in person is always the most impactful, followed by phone calls and then emails. Um, but any action is better than no action.
And I'll just bring up one thing, Brian, is that it going to, let's say, like the legislative day, or going down once, to Richmond for a lobby day, it should not be considered a one and done. It is, it is an opportunity. It is a great opportunity. It's an essential thing, but I think it is, it's a hectic time. I've seen it at the state level. I saw quite a bit for many years at the federal level. There's many. Your lobby day is also everybody else's lobby day. So there may be a whole bunch of other groups there that may be affiliated with environment or have nothing to do with environment. So, you're going to have time either with your legislator or with their staffers, which, by the way, is sometimes much more productive than actually meeting with the elected, since they are gatekeepers and they're also policy wonks. But it should be seen as an opportunity, just one piece of the puzzle, that there's this ongoing relationship you want to build. And so, as Brian mentioned, those town halls, being in community, seeing these folks. I've had probably more interactions with my delegate at the grocery store or at Lake Ann. I live in Reston, at the Lake Ann, plaza. And then she expects, she will see me when I go down to Richmond. But it's that constant, that kind of being at the top, even if you don't have something necessarily an ask. The good thing is to share information on something. Hey, this came across. If it's somebody that cares about data centers, look at this study. If you want to chat, it's just staying in their news feed, if you will. So it's much easier to ask a friend for a favor than it is to cold call somebody with an ask. And I think that's really the message is it's a piece of it. It's an opportunity. It's essential, but it's just one piece of the constant, relationship building and nurturing and fostering with your elected.
I
As
think
well, unfortunately, nowadays, social media is everywhere, and many, if not most, of our elected officials also have social media platforms of one form or another. Maybe you're on Facebook. Uh, I'm not, but yet if you follow your elected official on Facebook, don't just read what they have to say, don't like it, but make a comment. They notice that stuff. It's another way, as Chris is saying, to build that relationship.
to echo Scott's point. So Irene Chin, who is now in the House of Delegates, um, before she was elected, she used to run a nonprofit advocacy organization, and the two of us used to follow each other on Twitter before Twitter became evil. Um, and we originally actually got to know each other just by kind of tweeting back and forth. Um, she's now become a friend because when I showed up to an event where she was also at a few years ago, she immediately recognized my name as someone who we had exchanged back and forth uh, on social media. So I would say that is an effort, and especially if you combine that with in-person uh, actions, that can have a lot of power. But I will also say keep it very, very civil, because that's what's going to earn you the credibility and help build that personal relationship. Um, and
To
then,
add on to that, I just want to give a plug. FACS just this month, or actually last month, upped its social media game. We now are posting more regularly Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We started a Blue Sky. I think those are the four, right?
That's correct.
Chris?
That is correct.
Yes. So really you can help our visibility by, if you do Facebook again, that's maybe the only thing you do. Go to Facebook, follow Facts on Facebook, comment, share. Whether we like it or not, social media is a real thing. So
yeah.
please don't forget Facts on social media.
And I see you had your hand raised.
Yeah, Brian, I'm curious, having listened to everything that you've gone through, which is very helpful, I think, to many of us who have been doing advocacy for a long time, actually. Um, are you seeing pockets of resistance to a lot of what people like that who are gathered here tonight are eager to see going through the General Assembly this year, given the makeup of the General Assembly? I think we're all feeling fairly optimistic, perhaps on many different fronts, obviously. Um, RIP has been working, for a long time. We all know that on the environmental legislation. So I'm just curious for us a week in advance here to know, are there pockets of resistance to the kinds of legislation that all of us are hoping to see passed and adopted?
Um, I think the short answer is yes, there are pockets of resistance. What I will say though is you are completely correct. There is a lot more optimism right now than, for instance, a year ago. People are definitely heading into this legislative session thinking, all right, we are in a position where we can make some positive change. However, we can't, as the folks here on this screen, we can't just sit by and assume, well, everyone must be feeling the same way. What I will highlight is even last night at Rip Sullivan's town hall, Rip was highlighting how it is going to be a tougher budget year.
Yes.
And what that means is that while Rip wants everything that we talk about, I mean, we're working on two of his bills. Rip wants pretty much everything that we want, but the fact of the matter is it's going to be a tough budget year, and when we have to think about healthcare, we have to think about um, the economy and a bunch of other concerns. We are All of us on the screen here right now are very passionate about the climate and protecting the environment, but we're also competing with people who are just as passionate about their issues.
Mm.
So we have to really dig in and do the work to make sure that our priorities are actually the ones that are going to get through and get the funding that they need, especially in a tough budget year right now. And I'll also point out, it's kind of not fun to admit, but especially as we are working on data center legislation, the data center coalition has gazillions of dollars that they can spend on trying to get their priorities passed and blocking our priorities. The easiest way for us to combat that is for everybody on the screen here, all 40 of us, to get four different people to call their legislators. And then for those four people to get four people, and to really build up a strong grassroots army behind our legislation. And that's really, if you get down to it, that's what the rapid response team is all about, is
Right.
building that early momentum. Because while we might, in our circles of friends, we might not necessarily see opposition to it, there's going to be a opposition down in Richmond talking to the legislators, but then there will also be a gazillion different other priorities. Prime example, I will fully admit that on the same day that we are having our environmental lobby day, my wife is running a lobby day for her work down in Richmond. And so there's always going to be other, I mean, even in our family, there are other priorities going on. And so that's where having a strong grassroots army behind our issues would really help raise our bills to the top.
And
So to do that, you commented earlier, I think, about the fact that you do work with other coalitions. Um, are you comfortable about letting us know which coalitions you are FACS is specifically working with?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to describe it is we are a part of the Virginia Conservation Network.
Okay.
I serve on their legislative committee, their Clean Vehicles Committee, and we have representatives on various other committees on that Virginia Conservation Network. And then we also were a part of the Fairfax Healthy Communities coalition, and we're involved in various other coalitions. But I will highlight for our lobby day on February 4th, which I hope everyone is coming down to. That is a VCN is a lobby day, and then last year, for instance, we handled most of the Northern Virginia uh, meetings with Northern Virginia legislators.
Okay.
Um, and then, Chris, I don't know if you want to highlight other
yeah, no, I think
coalitions.
it's a lot of a lot of the the organizations there, a lot of the there are 100 and I don't know 150 plus members of VCN. And so, we may be working with one or two of them kind of on a sidebar on an issue, taking lead, but so it's not all 150 folks. I mean, the committee is broken up into folks that care about water, that care about transportation, that care about all these other issues. And so we may be, kind of going into an office with one or two of the partners going strong as leads on an issue. But that there are other folks that are there. Uh, I will say also, folks like Piedmont Environmental, Southern Environmental Loss, I mean, they're all part of ECN. So we will be working with a lot of those folks. So it's kind of the usual suspects, if you will. I will mention one thing that I want to highlight that Brian mentioned, because we've been talking about our three pillars. We've been talking about kind of the three bills. One's been dropped. We expect two to be dropped. One, we think will be modified. So they haven't been dropped yet because they're tweaking them a little bit. Brian also mentioned that because of all of these bills, and so many of the environmental bills going in, we're going to be, we're not putting on blinders, right? So we're not going to say, we're not, that's not one of our three bills, then we're not going to listen to you. We don't care about, we're going to be monitoring. And I've talked about this with some folks on the call too. We kind of rank our issues. Top tier is what Brian's been talking about, these three pillars, these three model bills. Secondary, we have a secondary level where we're going to be very supportive of other folks. If another partner gets a meeting and asks us will you come with us? We'll do it. We may not be burning, a favor or chip with an office to get a meeting, but we'll be there for it. And then we have kind of the third layer of priorities where we support something, we'll sign on to something, and we may be on a sign-on letter on it. So there's going to be many, many, many bills that we're going to consider or be supportive of. And in fact, the VCN committee that Brian sits on, legislative, does vote on, dozens of bills that VCN will weigh in on and
Right.
will be counted as a yay on those bills. So they never, go in with something that people are opposed with. It's almost always unanimous consent to the bills for support. And so we will be flexible. There may be an issue, and Brian mentioned that cost to a bill could be a prohibitive factor. There may be something that everybody loves and it's a great idea, but you just can't get the cash to make it happen. And then we can pivot. So we will be flexible during session. We're not going to say, okay, well, this priority is not going to, or it's going to stall or may not move. We're just going to kind of whittle ourselves down. We're going to continue to be flexible as things, and that's one of the that's one of the things that folks have been kind of doing advocacy on the call and professionally understanding. You have to be comfortable with ambiguity, comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes, and that's part of the game. But that's why, it's important to have the rapid response team. So where things kind of maybe meander a little bit, not on diverge from the course you want them to be on, you can either get them back on course, or move it forward. So I will say, and just reiterate that we're going to be flexible as we move through. It doesn't mean that we're going to take on 5 or 6 more priorities, but it's saying that we'll be flexible about how we approach things. We're not going to be rigid, and we're going to keep our ears open and work with continue to talk with our partners, whether or not it's a top level 1 priority or leaving level 2 for us.
Yeah, that is definitely 100% correct, and that's part of why we work in the coalitions for that very reason. Julie, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, I was also hearing Chris talk about, well, and you too, Brian, that there are trade-offs that our legislators have to deal with. There are competing interests. It's a tough budget here. And one of the things that I appreciated from time with Rich Sullivan this weekend was his belief that God created the next legislative session. What's his line? And that's why God created the next session. So anyhow, what I'm saying is this is also a glide path. Hopefully we get a lot of victories, and some of the issues we're dealing with are kind of hard. And so we may not get everything we want now, but we're making progress. The fact that we have a lot of momentum, we have terrific advocates. They're great groups. We work in coalition, and all of that. Don't get discouraged if things don't look like they're going our way, because we don't get a win this year, we might get a win next year. So, and all the groundwork that was done in the last 4 years, is hopefully coming to fruition this year or maybe next year. Oh,
All right.
Reggie, do you want to talk about Reggie?
So my understanding is that Governor Spanberger is supportive of rejoining Reggie. That is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding from the conversations with members of the General Assembly is that they believe it's going to happen. But as with most things, we cannot guarantee it until it actually happens. But I will say that is potentially something that if you feel like uh, reaching out to Governor Spanberger once she is inaugurated on the 17th, then that could be an issue that we reinforce that she has expressed support and we support her support. And so that's one way where we can really push her across the finish line. Um, and just to highlight your question about financial elements, there are various kind of financial elements um, to at least the EV infrastructure bill, and the others are various financial elements. But all the details of that we are going to be, especially with the two where we don't have the official bill yet, we won't know exactly what the economic impact will be until we see the final language of that. But with all of that in mind, I want to be mindful of everyone's time this evening. What I will say is, Anne, I know you've had some questions. Dave, I appreciate you chiming in the chat as well. But anybody, whether you ask questions tonight or not, if you have any questions, um, you will be getting an email from me in the morning. But you can also always email me. If you want to ask questions via email, ask them in the email. If you want to set up time to either hop on a Zoom together or grab coffee together, I'm always available. I love meeting with volunteers, especially as we're gearing up for the big fight. So in the morning, you will be getting an email from me. In there will be a link to sign up for the rapid response team. If you can sign up for that team and commit to sending out at least one of the emails that we send out to the rapid response team, that would be amazing. If you have 4 friends who might want to join the team too, that would even be more amazing. But even if you just tell your annoying next door neighbor that you want them to participate, that is also a big victory. And so I appreciate everyone coming out tonight to spend some time with us. You'll be getting an email in the morning, and I look forward to joining together in community as we stand up and help to fight to protect our environment as we head into the General Assembly session. So
We're
thanks everyone
excited,
for coming out.
Brian. This is a great start. We've had 40 people on the call. We had more people show up in Richmond last January than FACS has ever had before. We're going to break that record this year. Please show up on Lobby Day. Chris and Brian, we really appreciate everything you're doing for us.
Yeah, thanks
Woohoo!
everybody.